Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
It's time to play ball. Today we're talking about The Sandlot. This is our second great early 90s baseball movie on the podcast. We previously covered A League of Their Own last year. And to me, this movie just is summer. It is childhood. It is the perfect encapsulation of what it feels like to be a kid, with or without the baseball, honestly. It's just a really delightful slice of life that I know means a whole lot to whole generations of kids. So I'm very glad we're finally getting around to this classic today. And to help me do it, we have a pair of twins coming onto this team to join us. They've previously been on the podcast talking about the Santa Claus and the Land Before Time. Please welcome back from the Media Lit podcast, Randy Allain and Kris Ingersoll.
So stoked to be here, Doug, as always. Thank you for having us back, especially for this movie.
Yeah. So stoked to be here.
I like that one. I'm going to go with that. So you can be yeah. Kris, if you were going to be one of these kids, which one would you be?
In my dreams or in reality?
I guess. Fair question. Yeah, which one? Everybody would be Benny in their dreams.
Yeah, right. Benny the Jet in my dreams. I'm probably like somewhere closer to Bertram Weeks, I think.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm probably somewhere between like Ham and Squints, although I never wear glasses. So, yeah. So let's talk about The Sandlot, guys. This was your pick for today, and I'd love to hear why. So, Randy, I'll throw it to you first. Tell me about your nostalgic memories of The Sandlot.
Yeah, this is just like the quintessential childhood movie for me. I wasn't the world's biggest baseball kid, but I think that was probably the interest that my own father was the most desperate to like impart to me. When we got to share this movie together, it meant so much to him, right? Because this came out when he was around the age I am now, right? Like all the people who were his age were getting their nostalgia out there. Their television shows were coming back. This childhood baseball tale, I think, felt real to my dad. Like this was the way he spent his summers, playing baseball as much as possible. He had all those glory days stories. He tried really hard to get me into baseball card collecting, which took for a little while. I'm actually sitting not far from all of his old baseball cards right now. And even though I never got deep into baseball, this film transcends that. It's, not even just about competition and friendly competition, but it's about the human connections you make in the game. And I think that's why it's timeless, and why even my own 10-year-old, who's even less invested in sports and baseball than I was, also loves this movie because it's imagination, it's storytelling, and people coming together.
Kris, how about you?
Dude, so well said, Randy. I love you. This movie, absolutely, Doug, you said it at the beginning, this thing is childhood. It is summertime. Everything I feel about baseball is encapsulated in this movie. I wasn't a big baseball kid. I played Little League. I played through like the 5th grade. I wasn't particularly good. But the baseball aside, I had, much like Randy's dad, a very Sandlot sort of childhood. There was a specific period where we lived in a neighborhood in Wakefield from the time I was in like kindergarten to the 4th grade, where my summers were full of adventures just like these, hand-built forts, campouts, just leaving the house. Mom, I'm leaving. I'll be back. And then running around with my friends all day long. The downtown of this town looks like the little downtown I grew up in. There's so much about this movie that is relatable. Randy and I have a question on Media Lit about how a film influences like your values or your style. I'm watching the movie again, and I watch it probably at least once a year. So this, I wasn't particularly stale on it, but I did rewatch it for this. And I was looking at the kids and how they're dressed and laughing at myself and how hard my brother and I tried to emulate their style, from the cuffed jeans to like the tucked in shirt or baseball tee. Very much influenced my style. I love this movie.
Yeah, I definitely remember falling in love with this movie when it came out in '93. I would have been 13. I wasn't the biggest baseball kid either. I didn't play a lot of baseball. I loved going to games. That was always a fun ritual. Anytime we went to a baseball game, it was a good time. And I still, every year, I feel like if I don't get to enough baseball games, I kind of feel like I kind of wasted the season. I have no interest in watching it on TV, but like going to the game is like that's fun. The kids love it because there are plenty of treats for them, cool things to eat regardless of the game.
Yeah.
And as I said up top, it weirdly, for a movie where they spend a lot of time playing and talking about baseball, this movie is not really a baseball movie in a lot of ways, because this isn't like A League of Their Own, say, or The Natural, where like the point of the movie is that they're going to win the big baseball game at the end. There's only one time in the movie they play baseball against anybody, and it's a quick rout and it's over. And as they say pretty early on, right, they're not keeping score. There's no one has any consistent positions really. It's just sort of endless play. And the movie is so much about that, right? That feeling of just endless playtime that goes on forever, and the connection you forge with these other kids and friendship. Like, that's what's the core of this movie, and why people still connect to it, because outside it still doesn't even have a plot, or barely one. There's the first half of the movie, there's like almost no plot at all. And so, like, for a movie to pull that off, like, hey, we're not really going to have a story or a particular focus, and for it to still work, it's because the rest of it is invested in like heart and childhood magic.
Vibes. Dude, you said that so very, very well. I think the baseball in this movie is very much vibes only. The movie is somewhat vibes only. I did note that it's not until after an hour of cinema, and there's only 40 minutes left, including the end credits, that we actually hit sort of like the big event. And then the movie sprints downhill from there. But yeah, it's very vibey, this movie. And I think, similar to you, that's how I relate to baseball. I also try to get to at least a couple of games a year for the Red Sox. The culture of baseball, everything in and around the experience of baseball.
The crack of the bat.
Yeah. More than the actual playing of the game. There's something truly special about the pastime.
Yeah, well, that's the word that's often used to describe baseball, right? It's the national pastime, and this is like passing time in a lot of ways. And of course, harkening back to the 50s here, this is, as you would expect for films released in the 80s and 90s, you see a lot of 50s nostalgia, because that was the age of the people making it, just like we're inundated with 80s and 90s nostalgia now, for the same reason. And so, like, for me, like, getting transported to the 50s in a way is almost like, for me now, is like transporting me back to the 80s in a way of like, oh yeah, because in Back to the Future, that's where Marty McFly goes. He goes to 1955, or Peggy Sue got married. Like, all of these things that, like, kind of shed a lot of sunshine on the 50s, even though in real life the 50s were pretty difficult times for a lot of people. The like rose-colored glasses version of the 50s is a lot of fun just as a setting.
Yeah, and even like the rose-colored glasses version of baseball, Benny the Jet Rodriguez is like, he's such a great kid and such a great role model, for a million reasons that I'm going to be talking about for the entire podcast, I'm sure. But the one right now, like you mentioned earlier, Doug, they don't keep score. Benny just wants to play. He wants to keep rotating through the positions. Every time someone new goes up to bat, he gets to try out a new spot on the field. And even in the final moments of the film, when we get the flash forward and he steals home plate, that's such an old school baseball move. In a world even then that was like more and more obsessed with home runs. Like, we get the little nod to Hank Aaron in the middle. But Benny's just got this pure love of baseball. He could hit that thing out of the park anytime he wants, but he's not going to do it because they need to hold on to that baseball. He's going to hit it directly into Small's glove. And yeah, I love the purity of that. Like there's this open question. Why isn't he on that team with the great uniforms? It could be like a socioeconomic reason. perhaps. It could be the fact that those kids don't really care about the game the way his friends do. It could be a little combination of all of those things. They clearly recognize his talent and kind of covet him for the team. But I love that he wants this pure experience because he's not going to let the appearances of baseball get in the way of his pure love of the game. As one of my favorite musicians, Jonathan Richman, once put it, Kris knows I love to mention Jonathan Richman all the time. For folks who aren't familiar, you might know him as the troubadour who gets shot out of a tree at the end of There's Something About Mary. But I saw him in concert in the, late 2000s. It was during a Red Sox playoff run. Jonathan Richman does a lot of Boston and New England themed music. He has a song called Twilight in Boston, and he mentions like walking past Fenway. And someone tried to get up like a Go Sox kind of chant and like try to get Jonathan Richman to like weigh in on the playoffs. And he just kind of looked out at the crowd and he's like, I just prefer to play. He wasn't going to get sucked into like homerism or fandom or tribalism. It was just like the pure love of the game. And I love that in Benny.
Love that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you guys, you're both Red Sox fans, I assume, based on where you're from, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this movie spends a whole lot of time idolizing Babe Ruth. So how do y'all feel about that? The pride of the Yankees. Well, I guess he's not. Lou Gehrig would have been the pride of the Yankees, right?
Yeah, but you associate the Babe certainly with their the beginning of their successes, right, and their long empire.
And the curse. The curse of the Bambino.
And so that's why my answer is on the other side of 2004. It doesn't sting quite as much. But as a kid, I was like aware. I probably only knew like the nickname The Great Bambino because of the curse. So when I saw this movie, I was already primed for that nickname and for this character in baseball lore.
Yeah, it's easy for me to take because, full disclosure, I'm a bit of a lapsed baseball fan. Like you said, unless I'm going out physically to the park, I don't tend to catch a lot of baseball. It's partly just due to time and becoming a dad, but one theory I have is I think breaking the curse kind of ruined it for me, in the sense that you think that's what you want, but once the romanticism of the curse is gone and you're just dishing out all this money, like it loses a little bit of the value and the resonance, like my favorite memory is watching my favorite baseball memory in a weird way is like watching the Red Sox get eliminated because I knew Jose Offerman was safe at second, not out. And that sticks with me in a weird way, almost more than the glorious moments. So I can let it go.
Yeah, it didn't do much for me. I'm from Southern California, so my team is the Angels, or as they're horribly known, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is baffling that somebody made that decision. It's like, the San Francisco A's of Oakland. They don't do that. It's because, why? Because they play in Oakland. So anyway, that's my rant on that for 2 seconds. But
you do have a great baseball movie of your own, being an Angels fan.
Which I've never actually seen. But my parents are New Yorkers, so all of like kind of the love for the Yankees is sort of like genetically there. If the Angels aren't doing well and the Yankees are, I will certainly happily trade my loyalty to root for my ancestral baseball team, as it were. So, it's always cool to see Babe Ruth celebrated. And they talk about this legendary moment where he supposedly called his shot. And I know there's some question about whether that is what he was actually doing. Whether he was really pointing to center field or if he was gesturing at something else in the same general direction. But as I was watching a YouTube video on it today, actually, of like, what was the deal with Babe Ruth calling his shot? And there were some people who were there. Lou Gehrig, who was on the team, says that's exactly what Babe Ruth was doing. But, he has a vested interest in saying that. Some of the people were just spectators and they were like, unsure. It's like hard to tell. But they said, honestly, the legend is so cool that like, why ruin it? Like, it's one of the greatest moments in sports history, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I'm so glad you commented on that because as I was listening to the opening narration today, I was reflecting on how much I take for granted the gravitas that they put into the way they present the story. And I've never thought to question it my whole life. I've held it up as exactly that momentous, exactly that important. And all of sports. They call it the greatest moment in all of sports history. They say that when he pointed, nobody could believe it because nobody had ever done it before. But that also suggests that like somehow everybody understood what was happening and like it was dawning on all of them all at once what was happening, which to your point with these mixed testimonies probably was not the case. There were probably some people who were completely unaware, some people who were scratching their heads as to what he was doing up there. I doubt very few were like, oh, he's saying he's about to hit a home run. And then he did. But I have always in my heart held it to be exactly the way they present it in this film because it's so epic and beautiful.
Yeah. So the conflicting, we might as well get into this a little bit. So this was in game, I think, 3 of the World Series at the time, I think. And they were not at home. It was against Chicago, and they were at Chicago. And the hostile crowd was just yelling at Babe Ruth and booing him and everything else. And so he takes 2 strikes and he's trying desperately to sort of hear what's going on. He apparently was pretty good at just shrugging off the antics of the crowd, but he was trying to hear. And so I think there was some people say he was questioning whether the count was correct, that it was actually 2 strikes versus a strike and a ball or whatever. And so at some point he undisputedly does put his arm out in the direction of center field. So the legend is he's pointing at the pole out there saying, I'm going to hit that on this next one. Just you watch, basically. Or possibly he's gesturing towards like the dugout, which happens to be in the same direction, or, something else that is kind of, again, just sort of ahead of him in center field. But regardless, that is exactly where he hit the ball, like a 490-foot home run, at this moment. And just, a legend was born.
Unreal. Baseball is a game of legends.
Yeah. Well, so what's fun about this movie is it sort of treats all of its, like they talk about the legendary moments of Benny the Jet Rodriguez's career, but the legendary moment is not anything he did on the field. It's this something that we're going to find out later that he did during this one magical summer in the 50s. So we start out, we see a person we'll later find out is Scott Smalls, our protagonist, as an adult, and he's going into the press boxes at Dodger Stadium, and he's talking about Babe Ruth calling his shot, one of the greatest, this great moment in sports history. And 30 years after that, so that tells us exactly when this is in the 50s, Benny Rodriguez became a neighborhood legend and got me out of a pickle.
There is one all-time greatest moment in the history of sports, and it happened in the 1932 World Series. The story goes that in the bottom of the 9th inning, with 2 outs, a full count, and the tying run on base, Babe Ruth raised his arm and pointed to the center field bleachers. No one believed it, because nobody had ever done it before, but the Babe was calling his shot. On the next pitch, the great Bambino hit a towering 400-foot home run. And even although he'd been a hero before that, that's pretty much how he became a legend. 30 years later, a kid named Benjamin Franklin Rodriguez became a neighborhood legend. It was in the greatest summer of my life when he taught me how to play baseball, and he became my best friend. And he got me out of the biggest pickle I'd ever be in.
Poppin' time. Finger poppin'.
We'll find out what that pickle is in about an hour. But the narration for Smalls is actually the movie's writer and director, I found out, which is like, you can tell this is a very personal film.
Yeah, you can feel that from the beginning. It's in the score almost. I think I used the word gravitas before, and I mean it again. Sort of the film establishes a sense of gravitas in that opening narration and the score that's behind it. You can tell you're in for like an epic tale.
Yeah, you can also just kind of feel this movie, it's its own piece of art that deserves its own credit. That's why we're talking about it here today. But you can feel it kind of riding the coattails of Field of Dreams a little bit. We even get like the ghost of the great Bambino himself at one point in the film. So yeah, it's almost like the public was primed for this. Like we were ready for it. And like we did get a lot of great baseball movies in a pretty short span of time.
Right. We mentioned that the Natural, League of Their Own, Major League is in there.
Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. There's a
Little Big League.
Yep. There's a few others I'm forgetting from this group. A lot of baseball movies. And so we watch Benny at the plate. He's at school. We'll find out there's only 2 weeks left towards the end of school anyway. And we watch Benny get out of a pickle, which meaning for people who aren't baseball folk, that means he's between two of the bases. And he's cornered because you've got one person at, like, say, second. And as Benny runs towards third, the guy at second throws the ball to third. He runs back the other way. He throws the ball back to second and back and forth. But Benny, being, future major leaguer, is able to work his way out of this pickle and safely make it to the base or to home, wherever he's going. Having seen these, I have seen people get out of a pickle in, like, professional baseball, but it is rare. I've seen plenty of people get into them. Not getting out of one is very hard.
They establish.
Go ahead.
I was going to say they establish so much about the character right there in that moment, and who he is and what he'll mean to this story and every other character in it. He's got the Jets.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like, he's like the best kid that ever lived, right? Like, he's incredibly nice and, like, talented and, like, zero. He's a little bit of a Mary Sue, you could say that, but he's the deuteragonist here. He's not really the protagonist. He's there to be Smalls' guardian angel throughout this movie. So we learn a little more about young Scott Smalls, who has just moved into this town. We'll find out it's supposed to be the San Fernando Valley. There's only 2 weeks left in school, so he has no time to make friends. He's kind of an indoor kid, but he notices Benny. He wants to make friends, and, like, his parents are both kind of like, well, his mom is encouraging him to go outside and play and make friends. His stepdad, played by self-proclaimed asshole Dennis Leary, is and wicked Bostonite, I should say.
Yep.
He's interesting. Like, he seems a little cold and, like, disinterested. He's not a bad guy, but he's, like, it seems like him and Smalls are not on, like, they don't have a great relationship.
Yeah, I think he definitely leaves something to be desired as a dad. I think we're seeing him in the stage before he is either the dad who stepped up or the stepdad. You almost get the sense that he's not a bad guy. He's just a little disinterested. Like, maybe he fell in love with this woman and he wasn't planning prior to become a father, but he fell in love with this woman who had this boy, and so here's his life. He's not mean at all, but that kid needs attention. That kid clearly needs something from him that he's either willfully not giving or oblivious to, and so he leaves something to be desired.
And I feel so bad for this kid because Dennis Leary's not giving much of anything. And his mom has clearly put all this pressure on him to call this guy dad. And she does go to bat for her son a few times, but that's kind of a big ask when it's clear how little he's giving. I get why that's a dream that she has, but yeah, I mean, probably he's repeating what he learned, right? When he was 12, he was probably out there playing baseball on his own, no one to teach him, scrapping it out, and he can't quite understand this kid. He might even be intimidated. They play up the whole little, egghead mentality. In fact, there was one detail I don't remember ever noticing before that really hit me in the feelings this time, which is when we're seeing all of his nerdy stuff in his room, I had either forgotten about or saw for the first time that he has an autographed photo of Mr. Wizard, who I used to love to watch early in the morning on Nickelodeon doing science experiments, and I was just transported.
There was one other piece of set dressing I noticed that was really funny. So at some point, we see a pennant, and it just says Southern California. It's not a team. It's not any sport, just the text, Southern California. Like, he's a fan of the geographic region. Yeah, it's weird. Mom, we should talk. Mom is played by Karen Allen, who's Marion Ravenwood from Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Indiana Jones franchise. And doubling for Southern California, by the way, this film is mostly shot in Utah. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like you're making a movie in what would normally be the capital of movie making in Southern California, but you're going to not film in Southern California. You're going to go to Utah. But the only reason I assume they did that is because you need this town that looks like it's the 50s, and maybe there's nowhere left in I forget where they say that. I think he specifically says at one point they're in, like, Glendale or somewhere in the valley. that just doesn't look like this, even by 1990 when they were, or the early 90s when they were filming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure Utah was a means of finding a place that was stuck in time to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one thing he takes stock of is that his stepdad is a baseball fan, and he's got this ball. We don't get a good look at it here, but he's got a ball that he keeps on a little stand. This is some sort of piece of memorabilia he cares a lot about, that will eventually be the focal point of the movie. And he promises to teach Smalls how to play at some indeterminate time in the future. Classic movie stepdad promise. Yeah, sure, I'll get around to it. And so Scott runs down to the Sandlot. We find out that he followed the kids there once before. That's how he knows where it is. Mm-hmm. And he just watches them play. And this is where we get our narration about how this is an endless summer where, the rules of baseball barely matter.
Yeah, I think that is the moment where you know that this is a special movie, because sports are so often just wrapped up into like competition or qualifying for scholarships, or, I've got a 10-year-old and sometimes I observe the very intense sports parents. So to just see this be purely about the kids, it really is magical.
Yeah, it has a dreamlike quality to it. Every time they're filming these sequences of them just kind of just tossing a ball and hitting it and, playing, like, it has this dreamy feeling. That is what I think hit me hard this time watching it. I'm like, man, I remember being a kid, even if I wasn't a sports kid, just running around during the summer when time was, there was just an ocean of time, it felt like, and you could do anything. They capture that so well in just the cinematography, the way things are. Sometimes they're in slow-mo, and the musical choices here, whether it's the score or the 50s needle drops, like it's just, it's a sublime recreation of what it feels like to be a kid.
Great word, sublime. And in the narration, I think there's two words that specifically stood out to me that were chosen, I think, to create that vibe. He says it's like they had their own baseball kingdom. It was the most amazing place he had ever seen. And then he calls it an endless dream game. It's like the only thing that he can use to describe it. The language is so intentional there to create that vibe.
Yeah. And we learn that there's only 8 people on this team because one of their friends moved to Arizona. And Scott figures, hey, I can just stand in the outfield and take up space. Uninvited, he just goes out there and just stands there. And we hear for the first time this ungodly sound that comes from the other side of the fence. And like, this hit home for me too. I mean, we'll talk about the beast a lot as we go through, but the scary ass dog on the other side of the fence. Like, did either of you guys, was there a scary ass dog like this in your childhood?
We didn't have a specific scary animal, but there were places like this that we weren't meant to go, where like you were fairly certain if you ventured back there, there was something that could get you. There was a field in a part of my town that you weren't meant to play in. There was an abandoned RV back there that was very alluring to a young child. So no, I was never afraid of like a specific town animal, but there were certain places where I was like, oh, there's trouble back there. That's where you go get hurt.
So I never had this experience like at my youngest point in life. However, my sister's neighbor has some kind of giant dog right on the other side of the fence that separates their property. Not one that they're scared of, but to the point where like you can sense the size and presence of the animal. And also my wife has this incredible childhood story that sounds like a Pixar movie, where they had this childhood dog that was, it was a mix. It was a shepherd, a German shepherd, and something else. But this dog literally belonged to someone who was like a long distance truck driver who lived down the road, who would get left chained up a lot. And this dog would consistently break free of his chains and go play with my wife and her siblings, to the point that the guy finally came over one day and was like, do you want the dog? Like, he's clearly going to be happier here. And they kept the dog.
Love that.
I definitely remember there were some houses walking by them as a kid. Like there would be a dog. I couldn't even see it. I would just hear this loud barking. It would scare the crap out of me. And I love dogs. Like I'm a total dog person, but like as a little kid, like definitely there was some moments where I was like, oh God, what are they keeping back there? And why is it so angry?
Upon reflection, that sounds like my dog. My dog might have been that dog. I'm starting to realize, jeez.
So anyway, so Scott's out there. He hears this, but he kind of shrugs it off, at least the first time. Benny hits one out to where Scott is, and it hits him in the head. And they all just laugh at him. He grabs the ball and runs, and he tries to throw it, and it is the worst throw. It lands, 4 feet in front of him. And he just says, "My life is over," and he takes his gigantically brimmed hat and runs away. Sad.
Scotty Smalls is so perfectly cast. This kid is so sad and pathetic in that moment of heartbreak, and I relate so very much to that feeling of an incredible, unbelievable embarrassment has happened. You can't okay, that really just happened to me. My life is now over. My life will never be the same after this. It's a BCAD type of line in the sand on the timeline of my life when this embarrassing thing happened is so relatable.
Yeah. And he just has that I've never had to run before run so down pat. We get 2 different instances of him walking the ball over, and it's painful. I'm not specifically an athlete. He doesn't really get a good lesson in catch. The stepdad isn't very good at it, Again, I can remember learning to play catch with my dad. I literally remember the whole strategy. My dad was a very practical guy who loved a spreadsheet and also loved baseball. And he would literally go set up cones at different distances apart. And every time we completed a catch, we had to step further back. And if we missed, we'd step back forward, and so on and so forth. And just to see there be sort of no system here for this kid. And maybe the most dickish thing that the Dennis Leary character does is he's being pretty cool about the eye injury, and he tries to compliment Smalls. He's like, "Hey, at least you caught it." But then he does give this little snide, "You got to look out for the curve" comment to the tail end.
Yeah, this scene of him when he does get the baseball lesson, which is what happens next. His mom, his mom gives him this wonderful pep talk about hey, how many moms will tell you to go out there and get in trouble? Not too much, but be a kid, go out there and do and have kid fun.
Scotty, have you made any friends yet?
No,
Why not, honey?
because I'm still new.
I don't want you sitting around in here all summer fiddling with this stuff like you did last summer and the one before. I know you're smart and I'm proud of you. I want you to get out into the fresh air and make some friends. Run around, scrape your knees, get dirty. Climb trees, hop fences, get into trouble, for crying out loud. Not too much, but some. You have my permission. How many mothers do you know who say something like that to their sons?
Well, none mothers, I guess.
Honey, I want you to make some friends this summer. Lots of them.
Yeah, I know. But I'm not good at anything, Mom. Face it, I'm just an egghead.
Oh, honey, you'll always be just an egghead with an attitude like that.
And she brokers the catch lesson that you're talking about with Dennis Leary. So they go out there and he, after a couple of failed attempts getting him to try and, keep his eye on the ball, he unfortunately gets his eye right on the ball, and he throws it, and it's right, beans him in the head, ends up with a black eye. It's a mess. And so he's sitting on his porch, just, kind of not knowing what to do with himself. And Benny, out of the goodness of his heart, spots him and says, "Hey, you know what? We need an extra guy." And I love the way that Scott tries to talk Benny out of this, going "Well, I can't because see, my glove's busted." And Benny's like, "Whatever, I got an extra one." It's no matter what roadblock that Smalls tries to throw, Benny is like, "No, I got you. You're out of excuses. We're gonna go play."
Yeah, he's just carrying the glove in his back pocket. He's the coolest guy. He's already ahead of the excuse. We'll get there, but he masks, I think, the true intentions that he has here. He'll tell the guys that it's just about getting a ninth player. Come on, but he's observed Scott. His heart has already gone out and connected with this new kid in the neighborhood, and you can see it in the performance actually of this young actor, I think.
Yeah, and he's one of those kids. I'm a high school teacher, And like one of the interesting dynamics that comes up is just like the kids who look older than the other kids. And not every kid always leans into that in the most selfless or supportive way. Many do. But Benny is like this, like Doug said, like he's just such an incredible kid. And like, it is kind of a ragtag group of kids who you wouldn't necessarily expect on the baseball field. But man, that training pays off. They're great, whether they're hitting home runs. We do land at least one really successful bunt in the game against the opposing team. But yeah, love that.
He's so selfless. Like he just, and you can tell that like his talent is rubbing off on the team. Like that's where they get it from. Like it's, he's like literally this kid can do no wrong. He's he's really got like the most finely tuned moral compass to to go help Benny out. Not Benny, Scott. So we meet the team. They are hanging outside of a drugstore or a supermarket, and the first one we kind of get to know is Hamilton, aka Ham. This is Patrick Renna's character, the quote unquote fat kid, even though he's not actually fat. But they play him as the fat kid, mop of curly hair, and he's doing his best impression of Babe Ruth, which they don't get. And this leads to a discussion where Scott tries to pretend he knows who Babe Ruth is, based on all of his various honorifics.
And the Bushman, too. Oh, man, don't let me see that. Yeah, listen, ready? Check this out.
I'm the Great Bambino!
What?
I'm the Great Bambino!
What?
I'm the Great Bambino!
Oh. Who's that? What?
I had no idea who they were talking about.
What did he say? What, were you born in a barn, man?
Yeah, what planet are you from?
But there was no way I could let them know.
You never heard of the Sultan of Swat? The Titan of Terror. The Colossus of Clout? The Colossus of Clout.
The King of Crash, man.
So, I lied.
Oh, yeah, the Great Bambino. Of course. I thought you said the Great Bambi. That wimpy deer? Yeah, I guess. Sorry.
Anyway, Scott, that's Timmy and Tommy Timmons. Mike Squints Pelladors. Alan McLennan, we call him Yeah. Bertram Grover Weeks. Kenny DeNunez. And Hamilton Porter. We call him Ham. Guys, this is Scott Smalls.
Hi.
Yeah, well, he's gonna play with us, because he makes 9, so now we got a whole team. We're wasting time. Let's go to the Sandlot.
Daddy, it's 9 o'clock in the morning.
This is endlessly quotable for me. That wimpy deer has been repeated ad nauseum in my life. I think I mentioned my brother and I shared this movie. We're close in age, a year and a half apart, and there are so many quotable moments throughout this film. This movie taught us how to swear as young men, but
Bitchin'.
right here and yeah, right. I also, so while I relate to some of the cool fun of the boys who do get what's going on, who can drop all the nicknames for Babe Ruth and they got a wisecrack and an answer for everything, I also relate to the intimidation of Scotty in this moment, because while I wasn't a new kid at that age, and I certainly knew my way, like I was athletic enough to know my way around a sport, I was never tuned in to sports fandom. As much as I'm a nerd and I love fandom in like other genre places, I could never name more than a handful of players on like a given sports team that I was supporting in a given season, except for like the 04, 07 Red Sox, maybe 2013, that era. I was pretty tuned in. But as a kid, that was like the most intimidating thing that could come up, is like, who's your favorite player type conversation. So I relate to the anxiety of Scotty in this moment and the fear of saying the wrong thing.
I was just going to say, not to break our chronological format, but just the fact that they pay that off so well later. When Smalls finally says, "Oh my God, that's the same guy." It's such a nice little setup for that moment later on.
Yeah, I mean, he's really out of touch, when it comes to baseball stuff. Because it's one thing to not know who your favorite players are now, but to not have even heard of who Babe Ruth is, that's I'm sorry, who's this Michael Jordan person of who you see?
Right.
The actor?
It almost ties back to that funny pendant you mentioned, almost like in his room, like he's approximated like a fandom, like he decorated his room like a sports fan, but it's just Southern California because he's not really a fan.
Yeah. Well, the team is understandably skeptical of Scott, but and they call him an L7 weenie and various other names. And so he goes out to left center once he figures out where that is. And after a few failed attempts, Benny finally tells him, look, just stick your glove up in the air and I'll do the rest.
You ever have a paper route?
I helped a guy once.
Okay. Well, chuck it like you would throw a paper. When your arm gets here, just let go. Just let go. It's that easy.
How do I catch it?
Just stand there and stick your glove out in the air. I'll take care of it.
About time, Benny. My claws are going out of style. They already are, Squints. Shut up. Told you, Benny.
Smalls! Throw it to second.
Okay. Not again. It's a waste of time, Benny. Please catch it. Please catch it. Please catch it. Please catch it. He's all right.
Told you so, man.
And he hits a fly ball right into the mitt. And like, forget Babe Ruth calling a shot. This is baseball as golf, and it's impossible. Like it's it's a magic shot.
Yeah, that's right. I pointed that out to my daughter. She was here watching it with me. She came home early from school today. And I said, watch how good Benny is. He's going to put, like, this is literally impossible. But they actually let Benny prep for it appropriately. Like, he takes a moment to sort of, like, spits on the ball a little extra and he rubs it in. Takes a big, heavy, deep breath and sets himself because he knows that pressure's on. He's got to take care of this kid right now and put that ball right in that glove. Unbelievable.
Well, like, and the other thing that's great about that is one perfect thing about this movie is there is this sense of an unreliable narrator. Like, obviously, it's the most obvious when we get, like, the fully monstrous paws and jaws of Hercules coming at us before we know his name even is Hercules. But you can kind of reverse engineer that back into other moments. You know, like maybe Benny 100% nailed it, or maybe he did 98%. And Smalls, looking back on this moment, is not giving himself quite enough credit for managing to piece it together. And I don't need to know the answer to that, but I just love that they've established that wiggle room for themselves.
Yeah, I love that you said unreliable narrator, because some of this movie does seem to be filtered through the eyes of kids where things are larger than life. Maybe logic doesn't quite work the way you really expect it to. But I love that, Scott throws the ball back. Like he is, and it's because Benny gave him the lesson that Dennis Leary wouldn't, which is like, hey, you remember having a paper route? You know, think of how you throw a paper when you're delivering a paper. You know, these just kind of simple steps to give him, and all of a sudden he throws the ball just fine. And initiation is complete. He is a full member of the team now. But we do get more snarling from the beast. And I noticed this, that you see like its shadow against this fence that it's behind. It looks like a T-Rex.
Yeah, my daughter cried out exactly as I did as a child. That looks like a dinosaur, she said. I go, you nailed it, buddy. It absolutely looks like a T-Rex back there. And to your point, like that unreliable narrator, that child's perspective, that's what he remembers seeing that day. It's great.
Yep.
Yeah, they were just like a full decade ahead of Lost here. Like, what is this creature we keep hearing?
Wow. I think you're right, Doug, too. Benny gives him the lesson not just in the mechanics, but also in the presence of mind, or lack thereof almost, for sports, right? He's like, don't think so much, just loosen up. And so it's almost like when that ball hits his glove, something finally breaks, where he's able to just like exhale a little bit and stop thinking so much and trying so hard, and he just lets the ball fly.
Yeah, after this point, his skill at baseball is not so much an issue. The film stops concerning itself with like, can he hit? Can he field? Can he do all that stuff? The only failing that, as will obviously come up later, is again his lack of historical baseball knowledge. But for now, yeah, he's a full-fledged member of the team. He's ready to play. So he comes home and he has this little moment with Benny where Benny says, "Look, keep the glove, burn your horrible giant brimmed hat, take this hat instead." It's like Benny would just give this kid like the shirt off his back. It's amazing. Like, he just keeps giving and giving and giving to this kid for no reason other than just it's the kind thing to do.
I do question the like clown costume nature of Benny's pants that he's wearing, because previously there was a baseball glove in the back pocket of the denim. They went and played baseball. They returned back home after making no other stops. And there was also a hat stuffed in the back pocket of those same jeans that nobody noticed. So I love the magic of that, I'll be honest. But I also love more seriously, he does tell him to burn that hat. But I noticed something at the very end of the movie that made me feel better about one small nitpick that came up for the first time ever for me watching this. I was watching and I realized, to an extent, there's a type of kid that Scotty is, that he's trying not to be, right? And there are some people in his life who are supporting him tamping that down. His mom loves that he's smart. She's proud of that, but doesn't want him to be a shut-in. And some of that is healthy, and it's about finding balance. But I was kind of tracking whether or not he was like, trying to change himself, and he keeps that hat. He doesn't burn that hat. He's still wearing it at the end. Right. And there's something encouraging about that he had this experience and he grew and he did break out of his shell a bit, and he's not so shy and he's able to make friends. But you can imagine that the erector set is still in his room. Whatever inspired the love, wherever that hat came from, that fishing hat, that's still a part of who he is. He's been able to grow and add things without necessarily taking things away.
Yeah, I assume that maybe that was his real dad's hat or something, because if he can wear it as an adult, it must be an adult-sized hat. But I've been joking about this hat. So picture the brim of a baseball cap, but it is twice as long. It is very silly. I've never seen a hat like this in my life.
Like he told a lie and the brim just kept growing.
Yeah. So he goes home and he writes some notes to himself, baseball things to remember, and it's really just like who is the great Bambino is the only thing he writes in there. So we go to more, it's the next day, which means it's more summer, more baseball, more kids playing, more trash talking, and a shot is hit over the fence. And we now learn that when someone hits a home run over the fence, that's game over. No one goes back to retrieve it. And everyone is like, Ham still does the home run, like he rounds the bases as everyone is like throwing their gloves at him and smacking him and stuff, and he's just laughing and having a good time. And Scott wants to know why can't we go get it back? Even though he probably really should know the answer to that by now. And they tell him it's the beast, and he goes to look at the fence to get a glimpse of it for himself. And after this terrifying moment of, we don't, as the audience, don't get a great look at this dog, but it's going to be a camp out. So before we get to the camp out scene, which we'll spend a lot of time on, I just love this first sequence of them like all really playing as a team for the first time.
Yeah, Scotty's in his baseball gear now. He's got like a ringer tee and jeans. He's fully immersed in the look and feel of the game. And yeah, he's one of the guys. You see them in the rhythm of the sport. And it's really pleasing when you do watch these kids play baseball. Like every one of them has enough skill to put the bat on the ball in the moments when they're supposed to. And so as a kid, I remember like I was the chunkier kid in my group of friends, right? So I related to Ham, and I also knew that as a kid that made me one of the stronger kids too. And so while I didn't always hit the ball, when I did, it was going to go somewhere. And so I liked that moment for Ham. And he's obnoxious, and I'll talk a little bit later about him as the kind of person in a group of men who ends up the leader if you don't have a Benny around. But I'll talk more about that later. But this is a ton of fun watching them play ball together.
Yeah, and it's a further extension of what a great kid Benny is. Because again, I keep bringing up my teaching because I was thinking about it the whole time. And if you have a club or a class, there are certain kids who stand out, who have this maturity beyond their years, this patience beyond their years, that really blows your mind when you see it. And that little push from Benny, he had to push back, he had to call a few names, but they've accepted Smalls so fully. And it's so clear so quickly. And I think I'm just fixated on that at that moment. And yeah, I'm a little happy for him because they've maybe crossed the line with how much shit they're giving him about his at-bat. And he's like, oh, I'm going to show them. And he's taunting them, low and outside, just where I like it. And I'm always kind of thrilled for him in that moment, even though Benny would never.
And I think it's interesting that, hitting a home run in this game, the endless dream game, is the worst thing you can do because it ends the game, right? You never want to hit a home run unless somebody has the dollar to buy a new one or has a spare lying around at home. And so we go from this to their camp out because at one end of the Sandlot, right by the fence of Doom, is this big tree house that's built there. So there we hear "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" by the Tokens, and Smalls gets his lesson from Ham in s'mores making.
Put on my jacket, and then she made me do the dishes.
Oh, your poor little mommy made you do the big fat dishes.
Hey, you want a s'more? S'more what? No, you want a s'more. I haven't had anything yet, so how can I have some more of nothing? Shut up! You're killing me, Smalls. All right, who cut one? These are s'more stuff. Okay, pay attention. First, you take the gram. You stick the chocolate on the ground. Then you roast the mallow.
No, it's my sleeping bag. That's mine.
When the mallow's flaming,
Yes, it is yours. It has a yellow stain on it.
you stick it on the chocolate.
You could have set the place
Then-
on fire, Ham.
You cover it with the other end.
Here, make me one of those. Yeah, me too.
Then you scuff.
I don't like that chocolate.
Just an adorable part of the movie. I always liked it.
Oh, it's maybe the most iconic part of the movie. First of all, that song, that's my first exposure to it as a kid, so it's squarely associated with this movie, before The Lion King. But that, "You're killing me, Smalls," how do we not all say that every single time somebody in life frustrates them?
One of the most quoted lines of any movie ever, I think. "You're killing me, Smalls." It's a great way to express annoyance with someone.
Yeah.
I would also add, I don't make s'mores very often, but I've never made a s'more without going through Ham's entire monologue. I've always had to vocalize it at least once per s'more making session.
And I've never heard anyone refer to the graham cracker as like the graham, the way he says it. He's like this, show some respect to this cookie, like the way he does it. It's very good.
Yeah. The mallow, the graham, each thing is its own sort of holy ingredient in the trifecta that is the s'more.
He's the best kid actor, I think, in this. Is Patrick Renna is very funny. He would go on to do other stuff, but like this is his first thing, like major credit, and like one of those just like. Yeah, if this kid, if he was a little bit older, he would have been in the Goonies, that in 1985. Like he's a perfect like kid actor that you would want. So awesome. So the night is moving on, and Squints, that's the one they call him Squints. His last name is Polydorus, but he wears the glasses, so they call him Squints. He looks like Buddy Holly, and he tells Scott the tale of the beast.
It all started about 20 years ago when thieves kept stealing junk from Myrtle's Acres junkyard. So Mr. Myrtle, the guy that used to own the place, got him this new pup from the dog pound. He fed him whole sides of beef and turned the pup loose in the junkyard. and the pup was grateful. And so, in a few weeks, the pup grew into the beast, and he grew big, and he grew mean, so that he could protect the junkyard with only one thing on his mind: to kill everyone that broke in. And he did. And he liked it. A lot. The beast was the most perfect junkyard dog that ever lived. A true killing machine. But after a while, the cops started getting phone calls from people reporting all the missing thieves. The ones the beast had killed. It added up to about 173 guys. It's true. But they never found a single body. Not one. Some people say they all got away. But we all know what really happened. The beast ate them. He ate them bone and all. The beast was too good at his guard dog job, so the police said he had to be retired. My grandpa, Squigman Palladors, was police chief back then, and he ordered Mr. Myrtle to turn his backyard into a fortress and chain up the beast and put him under the house where he could never get out to eat children and stuff. And that's where he's been for 20 years, and that's where he'll be for the rest of his life. Because when Mr. Myrtle asked the cops how long he had to keep the beast chained up like a slave, they said until forever. 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 Forever.
And it's presented, it's really cool. Like the movie, it goes into black and white. It's filmed as if it was like an old 50s B movie or maybe at a Twilight Zone episode. And it's this ridiculous story of how this guy at Mr. Myrtle, who owns the junkyard, bought a puppy and fed it a side of beef every day until it was eating like 173 guys. Like it's the perfect version of like a kid's story that's like, and then. And
the beast was thankful.
And he liked it. Squints, he goes, he ate around 120 to 173 guys. It's unbelievable. And everything about the production is charming, right? Because you've got like that really grainy filter on everything to your point, Doug. But then the robbers that we see, the first robbers that get got by the beast are in like literal black and white striped shirts with like domino masks.
They look like the robbers that would be on a Monopoly card.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, really charming.
Yeah. It's a page out of the Christmas Story book. Really. The Red Ryder BB gun all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, they present this, as you said, it's kind of yes, they're going for this like Twilight Zone-y B horror movie motif. But they're doing it in a way that feels like if a kid were to direct the Twilight Zone instead of Rod Serling. So like the angles are kind of like comical, the way people are filmed, and like punctuated by the end of the story where he, of course, another memorable quote, forever. So he's saying it like a way a kid would, but the adult on screen, his lip movements are also like he's sticking his big face out like forever. Yeah. It's all of that just sells this moment so well. It is like a huge highlight of the movie.
Yeah, and like the way they like so naturally define these kids in their roles, like Ham's playing up certainly some stereotypes, but like I don't have a lot of memories of anyone ever actually like commenting on his weight really in a direct way. Like it at the very least doesn't jump off the page at me. And like the way they just establish Squints is sort of like the keeper of the knowledge. Like they all have this role within the team. And they just fall into them so naturally. It doesn't really, like, we don't need exposition to get us there. Like, it all just comes together, and it feels natural when he's sitting up on that top bunk, dropping the story on everyone, because they know he's going to tell it the best, and he's allegedly got this family history and connection. What is it, my grandpa or my great-grandpa or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Who's like perfectly cast, the great-grandfather. Doug, I'm so glad you called out the delivery of that line, forever, because you can tell he's like doing it like ADR, like he's got the audio and he's watching and he's trying to actually act against the audio. Like Drunk History. You guys ever see Drunk History?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It reminds me of that, the way an actor will be intentionally performing it the way they know it sounded when the story was told. But he's like, his aesthetic is unbelievably cartoonishly perfect for that police chief in the old story. Big, bristly mustache, absolutely thick glasses under his big cop hat. Really, really perfectly cast.
Yeah. And so Scott is still skeptical of the story, but they tell him to go look over the fence, which they can see into the yard from the treehouse, and he sees the dog. We don't see it as the audience, but we know there's definitely a big dog down there. And we're told, one kid went over there and never came back. There's over 150 balls that have been lost to it. So it's real. And I hope you like Squints, because we're going to have a whole special Squints chapter. Because we were watching Squints, and who is a kid who's like, his bit is he says yeah or other words twice a lot. And they're just walking down the street, and they see Wendy Peppercorn, who is, I don't know how much older she is. She's probably a teenager. Local hottie, Wendy Peppercorn, to the tune of Sam Cooke's "There Goes My Baby," and there she goes. And they watch her. And they go to the Sandlot, and they're going to play, but they're complaining that it's too hot. So they quickly vote, let's go to the pool instead.
Where you guys been? We've been waiting here forever already.
Squints was perving a dish. Shut up, I wasn't. Yeah, you were. Your tongue was hanging out of your head, and you was swooning. Oh, Wendy Peppercorn, my darling lover girl. Oh. I said shut up. Got a lot of things on my mind. This pop isn't working, Benny. I'm baking like a toasted cheese here. It's so hot here. It's 150 degrees out there. You can't play baseball. You have to call it for the day.
You gotta listen to him, Benny.
Yeah.
Vote then. Anybody who wants to be a can't hack it panty waist who wears their mama's bra, raise your hand. Fine. Be like that. So what are we gonna do?
And so I'm zipping past that a little quickly because I want to ask you guys, do you think that they really care that it's hot, or is this just Squints going, I want to go to the pool where Wendy is?
I think it's probably it's genuinely hot. You can see they're sweating. They've got the Coca-Colas, but there's a new motivation since Yaya and Squints get back from their run to the store. And I think that they're the ringleaders in the push for the pool for that reason.
Yeah, that's pushing it. But even when they arrive, the other kids are already complaining about the heat. And it's another one of the several ways that they really sell to us that this is a lifestyle for Benny versus a really great outlet for all of the other kids. You see it again later on the 4th of July. Benny's just running the bases, and they let the ball roll away because they're all in awe of the fireworks, but he can't stop. He can't let it go. They really borrowed heavily from this format on a property that Kris and I both love, Bluey. There's an episode of that show, called Cricket, and they very heavily borrow this vibe to show this one kid who really just has a passion for cricket beyond everyone else, and it's a great storytelling structure.
Could you imagine the existence of a person who understands the rules of cricket? I don't know a single one. I'm sure somebody understands it.
You got to understand a crumpet if you want to understand cricket. It's a Ninja Turtles quote for you.
I'll ask you guys, did either of you have a Wendy Peppercorn in your life?
Probably in terms of an older, probably the teaching assistant for my first grade class. I was fairly certain that I was charming enough to get her to marry me.
I'm sorry it didn't work out.
Yeah, I don't think I...
No.
Yeah, I don't think I had any specific Wendy Peppercorn-esque sort of crush. But yeah, just maybe like a passing fascination with someone who's a little bit older, or trying to figure out what a crush even is. Like that whole sort of vibe. But this moment in this film is just one of the most iconic scenes ever in a film. So I'm just excited to get to the main event here.
Yeah, I definitely, there was a girl who I had a little bit of a crush on when I must have been, maybe in 4th grade, and she was in like 6th or 7th. But it's I loved watching this in this movie because it reminded me of that feeling of like exactly where you're talking about. Where like, what is a crush? Like, how does your brain doesn't quite know how to process this stuff, and it's like, I get that she's pretty, but I don't understand like what's happening inside my head, and like, so that all felt very like true. Just like he just knows she's cute, but he decides, Squints decides to take a bold step in his infatuation with Wendy. So they all go to the pool. They're all swimming. They're all having a good time. And Squints breaks off from the group to go off the diving board, which is a bad idea because Squints can't swim.
Oh, man. Yeah, too cool. She don't know what she's doing. She don't know what she's doing.
Yeah, she does. She knows exactly what she's doing.
I've swum here every summer in my adult life. Every summer, there she is. Lotioning, oiling, lotioning.
And one day, it became too much
Smiling.
for Michael Squints Polydorus.
Smiling. I can't take this no more. Move!
And he did the most desperate thing any of us had ever seen.
And so he sinks to the bottom like a rock. Wendy dives in to rescue him, gives him some mouth to mouth. And the one of the best shots in the movie is just the look on this kid's face when he finally pops his eyes open, looks over at his friends and gives him a big like, eh. It's so funny.
Dude, the look from the child actor is like unbelievable. His face moves is like in a way that's amazingly comical, but it's really punctuated by the reaction from the friends. They don't smile and catch on. They're all like, huh? Like, what the was that look he just gave us?
Well, I was about 3 or 4 years out from my most recent watch of this film. I've watched it a million times. But one of the things that struck me is I forgot how long they sell that he maybe is drowning in the pool. I forgot how long it goes on before you get the little wink. I was like, wow, they really committed. And then when this magic moment pops in, it's, I think that shift is really part of what sells it. And like, obviously, none of us are standing here saying that it's okay to force a kiss from someone against their will.
No.
But the childish nature of the story, like the innocence of this kid, and the fact that she does give him that little recognize game glance on his way out, I've decided I'm allowed to have fun with this scene, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I did talk about this with my daughter. Like, I was trying to explain sort of the age difference and like the words. Luckily, the narrator uses to describe this as dirty, rotten, and it's low. It was sneaky. Like, they get kicked out. We explained why. But we also talked about power dynamics and that like Wendy is the powerful one in the scenario. So he sneaks the kiss, but there's something is to your point, Randy, where she gives him permission at the end with a little wink and a wave. We're like, all right, if she's cool, I'm cool. He is a small boy who just shot his shot in the most dramatic way possible. So, if she's cool, I'm cool.
Yeah. Well, one more in the column for please don't do a grand gesture to someone you like. Don't do it.
Yeah.
It does not go well in real life. Although, as we find out at the end of the movie, Squints and Wendy eventually get married and have 9 kids. So, but you're right. In the age of consent, like you have to think a little bit about like what's actually happening here. This seems a little creepy to like sneak mouth to mouth action from somebody else. But
yeah, like when I watch this movie with my sons, like we're having a little conversation for sure.
Right.
All right. So yeah. We transition from this to Ray Charles's wonderful rendition of America the Beautiful, and it is the 4th of July, and it's the one night. I love the idea of a night game. They are playing a night game, which is pretty late because it's the middle of summer, so the sun's not going down until like 8:30 at night. I mean, it's not 9 o'clock, so pretty late game. But the light from the fireworks is enough to allow them to play baseball at night, and you just get this fantastic montage of them all playing baseball under the fireworks to this Ray Charles classic.
Let's go. Come on, get your glove and come on.
What's the big deal?
Night game, come on.
Mom, go down!
In liberating strife, who more than self, country love.
There was only one night game a year. On the 4th of July, the whole sky would brighten up with fireworks, giving us just enough light for a game. We played our best then, because I guess we all felt like the big leaguers under the lights of some great stadium. Benny felt like that all the time. We all knew he was going to go on to bigger and better games, because every time we stopped to watch the sky on those nights, like regular kids, he was there to call us back. You see, for us, baseball was a game. But for Benjamin Franklin Rodriguez, baseball was life.
Okay, Ben!
When I was in school, we used to sing something like this. Listen here.
Do this, pitch me one.
Oh, beautiful.
This is part of why this movie is so nostalgic for me. I think I described before that my town sort of looked like this, and my childhood summers were something like this. And even though I was growing up in the 90s and not in the late 50s, my birthday is the 5th of July. So the 4th of July has always been like a really special holiday for me, a time that I just always enjoy the crap out of. And as a kid, I live in a small town where we have a huge 4th of July parade. The festivities on the town common begin first thing in the morning with like different kinds of races, and then there's craft fairs, and it's a whole to-do, like Americana to the max. So everything about what I see there on screen doesn't just remind me of watching this movie as a kid. It reminds me of my own childhood in very tangible, parallel ways. It's the feelings I get watching this scene are tough to hold back. My daughter will often look at me and just say, Dad, don't cry, because she knows I'm about to cry at a given scene in a movie. I'm a major weeper, and this one gets me. That Ray Charles song is perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we transition from America the Beautiful to another day, a day game at the Sandlot as they're all playing around. We watch Benny get out of yet another pickle. And we hear a musical track called Green Onions. Just music, no lyrics, but a famous piece if you ever heard it. I'm sure you'll hear at some point during this episode as I put in clips and such. And this the Cobra Kai roll up, as you mentioned, the rival baseball team here of kids on bikes. So I think we're meant to imply that the Sandlot kids aren't wealthy enough to have bikes, perhaps, because we never see them use any or rarely. But so this team rolls up on bikes and they challenge the Sandlot kids to a game with a bunch of very funny kid name calling.
Yeah, it's easy when you play with a bunch of rejects and fat kids, Rodriguez.
Shut your mouth, Phillips.
What'd you say, crap face? I said you shouldn't even be allowed to touch a baseball. Except for Rodriguez, you're all an insult to the game. Come on! We'll take you on right here, right now! Come on! Right now! We play on a real diamond, Porter. You ain't good enough to lick the dirt off our cleats. Watch it, jerk. Shut up, idiot. Moron! Scab eater. Butt sniffer. Pus licker. Fart smeller. You eat dog crap for breakfast, geek. You mix your weeds with your mama's toe jam. Yeah! You bob for apples in the toilet, and you like it. You play ball like a girl. What did you say? You heard me. Tomorrow. Noon. At our field. Get the buffalo butt breath. Count on it, pee-drinking crap face. Yeah! Let's go!
The name calling here is so brilliant. It harkens back to like great battles of wit of Vikings going back and forth via verse and rhyme to determine who was the best in that moment. It reminded me also this time around of Hook when Rufio and Pan have their back and forth and the cheering of the crowd sort of determined who gets the point. And right at the very end here, Ham gets the last word and his crew cheers and the other team rolls off. He's like, he won.
And I forgot to look up his name, but props to the actor who plays the asshole leader of the other team, because his delivery is perfect for the role. One of my 3 most quoted lines from this movie is definitely, "You bob for apples in the toilet, and you like it," is my favorite moment, even if it's not the final dagger.
What I love about it is, one, these feel very true to life kid insults.
Mm-hmm.
And they almost feel like the kids aren't thinking of them. They feel like, I heard my older brother say this. They're very adorably juvenile, right? Fart sniffer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's they're perfect back and forth with these kids. Well, not these kids, really just the leader of the other kids, and Ham is the mouthpiece here. And he drops the nuclear bomb. "You play ball like a girl." And there's something about how devastating is that? Recognizing, obviously, thankfully, we live in a little bit of a friendlier world to women now, but you do this supposedly masculine thing like a girl, as an insult, again, being a kid, especially in the 50s, that would be the gauntlet.
Oh yeah. Can I just add, we find out in the closing moments of the film that, Porter goes on to become a professional wrestler, the great Hambino. That's the sequel we deserve. I want to see him as an adult as the great Hambino. Nothing to do directly with the Sandlot. I need to see it, man. I'm here for it.
No, I think
he's still out there doing some fun little Insta reels about parenthood and whatnot. He's still got some chops.
The Ham cutting promos and talking trash into the microphone would be perfect. He'd be excellent.
I'm surprised someone hasn't done it. There were sequels made to this movie, and there's still another one being talked about being made. Sort of the way they're talking about doing with the Goonies now, and it's kind of like, you're right. The Great Hambino as a better version of Nacho Libre is a great idea. So they challenge him to a game, and I love that. Again, this is the one big quote unquote baseball game of the movie, because it's an actual competition between two teams, and it's over before it starts. The Sandlot kids crush these other kids easily. Even though, they recognize Benny's really good, but forget Benny, he's still only one guy. The rest of the team still carries their own weight. They do a great job, and it's over very quickly.
Hurry up, batter. It's gonna be a short game, and I gotta get home for lunch. That's one. If my dog was as ugly as you, I'd shave his butt and tell him to walk backwards. The heater. Here it comes. I dare you. Strike 3, you're up. Hey, is that your sister out there in left field? Naked? She's naked. Shut up, Porter! Hey, I'm just trying to have a little friendly conversation. Come on. You think she'd go out with me? Come on, show me your stuff. See what you got. Thank you, Mal. Thank you, Mal. This is good.
And this leads to the stupidest thing they say they've ever done. Their celebration of going to the carnival, getting a whole bunch of chaw, which I'm sure none of them have ever done before, sticking it in their mouths and going on a tilt-a-whirl till they all puke.
It's so horrifying. It's like the song I love because I also associate it with the Ninja Turtles, right? The live action Ninja Turtles film. But the color of the vomit is just so awful, and it's so burned into my brain that I can close my eyes and see it hitting the feet of the couple walking by after Scotty yaks. And there's something about this that just is so innocent. They have no idea what they're in for, like none whatsoever. Yeah says, yeah, it gives you tons of energy, right? All the pros do it. It gives you tons of energy. This is why we need education. This is why we need quality role models in people's lives, because these kids just know, hey, grown-ups do it. Technically, we're not allowed to, but probably just because they don't want us to do fun stuff. No concept of what they're in for, and it goes so bad.
Yeah, for me, the music cue brings me to Pee-wee's Big Adventure, personally. But yeah, it's some of the most disgusting movie vomit that I can think of, especially, not even so much when it's splashing off the ride, but when they step off and they've just all got that just nasty puddle. It's rough.
Do you have a favorite movie vomit scene? There are many great ones.
Actually, I do, as a matter of fact, and I've got to hand it to one of my favorite films, which is Knives Out. Vomit plays a pivotal role in the last act of that film, if you've never seen it.
I had not thought of that one, but you're right. That is a good barf scene. My mind went to two. One is Stand By Me, the lard ass sequence. And the other is, of course, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where Mr. Creosote projectile vomits everywhere, and it's horrifying, but very funny.
Nice.
Shout out Exorcist, but I'd rather not have to watch it again.
Sure.
Yeah, my mind didn't go to any of those places. It didn't even go to cinema. It went to Family Guy. There's an episode where Peter has he learns he can have a tab at the pharmacy, so he's just buying weird stuff, and they all decide to drink Ipecac. And it's hilarious and horrifying.
All right. Well, after all the barfing, now the movie is about to have a plot, because they show up the next morning for more baseball, as they always do, and Benny hits what they dub to be an omen when he rips it so hard that he takes the cover off the ball. And it has been done. They talk about it having only been done a handful of times in history, but it happens every once in a while. But I mean, you gotta really hit a baseball very, very, very hard, especially as like a 13-year-old or whatever he is to pull this off.
Mm-hmm. Benny's all humble and bummed out. He feels so bad for what he did. He's like, I just ruined the whole day. And Kenny says, no, you didn't. It's the most amazing thing I ever saw. Like, these kids are in awe and they're cool with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like as you said, he's bummed. It's like he says something like, it's only noon and we can't play anymore because I killed the ball, unless you've got another one somewhere. And Smalls makes the poor decision to go retrieve the ball from his stepdad's office, which we don't know it yet, but this ball is signed by Babe Ruth. And somehow none of the kids notice the signature on the ball while they're playing with it. But they play some more, and Scott is the one who finally hits his first home run with it into the Beast's yard, leading to panic on his part. True, like you watch the color drain from this kid's face.
Listen to me, Smalls. It's the matter of life and death. Where did your old man get that ball?
What? I don't know. Some lady gave it to him. Why?
What?
Lady? Yeah, she even signed her name on it. Some lady named Ruth. Baby Ruth.
Babe Ruth!
You're dead as a doornail, Smalls. Smalls, you mean to tell me that you went home and swiped a ball that was signed by Babe Ruth, and you brought it out here and actually played with it? Yeah. Yeah, but I was gonna bring it back.
But it was signed by Babe Ruth.
Yeah. You keep telling me that. Who is she?
What? What? The Sultan of Swat. The King of Crash.
The Colossus of Clout.
The Colossus of Clout.
Babe Ruth!
The Great Bambino!
is already pale-faced that his mom noticed.
Yes.
Third base is that way.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't even run the bases. He's at first the kids are like, I love Ham's like, yeah, it's like you're supposed to turn there, like, you know. But yeah, even they finally come around to realize like something's wrong with Scott. He's very, very, very concerned about having lost the
The
ball.
shock of his first homer was just too much.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and then he explains why he's so upset. He says, "I got to get that ball back from it was my stepdad's ball." Like, so he's like, "Well, some lady named Ruth signed it." And this is where, as you said before, Randy, this is where we get the payoff of like, you don't know who Babe Ruth is, you know, the Sultan, the SWAT, the whole spiel they go through.
Baby Ruthie?
Yeah. Babe Ruth. Oh God. Yeah, it's he's like sweating in that moment. The panic that is setting into him physically is it's obvious.
Yeah, because he's not a dumb child. Like, he knew this was of value to his stepdad, just fully lacked the tools to process it.
I had a hard time justifying the decision on this watch. I mean, he's like at that point already so accepted into the group. There is no reason why he feels the need to be the guy who goes and saves the day with this ball with this level of risk. Like, he's not looking for acceptance to a certain extent. I don't know why he does it.
And the movie lets us know, right? The price of a new baseball is $1. And like, I realize, hey, inflation being what it is, like $1 is a lot of money in the mid 1950s, but you could much easier, I mean, scrounge up that $1. I bet he's got $1 worth of change in his room at home, or at least collectively the kids all do. You know, like there was an easier way.
We've seen them replace a ball several times this movie already. They've already hit balls over the fence and had to come back with a new ball the next day.
Yeah, and like even with Small's situation at home, you know, I feel like he could be like, "Hey, Mom, I need a baseball. Like I've got the friends."
Also,
Right.
you know, again, none of the other 8 of them noticed the signature as they had been playing with it. So it's not clear how much time they had the ball to play with before Scott hits the home run. But still, somebody should have spotted that, given their mania. But anyway, so the Beast has the ball, and they scream and run, and Benny, kind of lets Scott know, like, yeah, that ball's probably worth more than your life. And so he, however, comes up with a plan. He goes and buys a replacement ball and forges Babe Ruth's signature, which, it's not good enough, but it might buy them a little extra time after Scott's stepdad gets home. Maybe he won't notice it. It will give them time to somehow figure out a way to retrieve the ball from the yard.
Which, again, to the point we were making, when they lost the ball earlier that same day, the solution was use the Babe Ruth ball. When the Babe Ruth ball is lost, they now can scrounge up 98 extra cents to buy a new ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think we get a moment of Benny instructing everyone to scrounge up the money, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, bottles, whatever they can gather, yeah.
We could have gone there earlier.
But it's nice that, again, they immediately come to Scott's aid to help him. Like, they don't bow out of helping him. They're just, they're all in this pickle together, even though it's really Scott's problem to solve. So that's sweet. And he puts the ball on the stand at home, and Karen Allen comes in. It's like, oh, that's your dad's Babe Ruth ball. And she gives him the whole spiel. Oh, he was the best baseball player ever, which of course now he finally knows. And the watch him die inside as he's listening to his mom explain this to him is very funny.
Oh yeah, my favorite moment of nerd humor is later when he's like, "Oh, you mean George Herman Ruth, who I have now researched in my encyclopedia or whatever."
Yep.
After this went so wrong for me.
Mm-hmm. So the team starts plotting. What are they going to do? There's a suggestion on the table to just ask Mr. Myrtle for help. And that is shot down because of the legend where supposedly Mr. Myrtle commanded the Beast to eat a kid. So that can't happen. And their first plan is to just use a broom handle, stick it through a hole in the fence, and kind of nudge the ball in the right direction. But the dog just grabs it, snaps it in half. So that's no good. And I think one of them, the next plan is to use the erector set that Scott has. They basically put a frying pan on the end of the erector set. The goal being to put the frying pan upside down over the ball and again scoop it back. the dog wrecks that in the same way. And I love that. I think one of the kids says, we're dealing with a superior intelligence. But yeah, this is the downhill sprint. As you mentioned before, Kris, this is where the movie just kind of picks up a huge amount of steam. So we go to the third plan, which is this long range suction cup attached to hooked up to 3 vacuum cleaners that they're going to try and suck the ball into this thing and haul it up the other side. And all the while, Squint is acting as a lookout with this like makeshift periscope that he's using to guide them where to put the thing. This fails. The dog kinks the tube, which causes the vacuum cleaners to all explode somehow. Like we're in like the Nickelodeon portion of this movie now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is where some of that like childhood, like dream logic you were describing before. This is a kid telling a story, or this is a man telling a story about his childhood. You have to imagine some of this is exaggerated because the engineering at play here, the contraptions these kids have cobbled together with various materials, it's pretty impressive. This is bordering on, some of these kids are bound for NASA, I'll tell you. What, they have 4 or 5 vacuum cleaners somehow all linked together to operate as one at the end of the pole. Impressive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and can I just shout out Squint and his enunciation in this film? Like, we already talked about the signature forever, but there are so many of his lines that have resonated with me over the years. Like, he pinched it shut. Just the way he delivers it, all those quiet instructions. I also want to shout out those Wheaties boxes, because I don't know if this is really still part of the public conversation anymore. Like the athletes on a Wheaties box. That still had like a lot of play when I was a kid in the 90s. You had like the dream teams and stuff like that. Like we would sometimes buy those cereal boxes. I feel like I haven't heard about Wheaties for years until it suddenly popped up recently as part of the Marvel's Thunderbolts advertising campaign, like putting them on the Wheaties box. But yeah, that had a lot of cultural, I think, currency when this came out, like that sense of greatness being emblazoned on the cereal box. And it's even there in the periscope.
I assume now that someone just goes like, yeah, it's LeBron again. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all these schemes and contraptions and stuff. I think you're right that there's some sense of like maybe this is being exaggerated, in the narration. Also being exaggerated is the beast, because every time we get a glimpse of it, it's not a dog. It's like a puppet that appears to be, kaiju-sized dog.
Yeah, when they move on to the erector set, right, the next plot is every bit of erector set that Scotty's got, and you see that giant dog.
Yeah. But before they go to their second to last plan, I should say, we have, the long dark night of the soul. And Scott thinks his life is over. Benny has a dream where he is visited by the ghost of Babe Ruth.
Who's there?
Now don't go pee in your pants, kid. I'm just here to give you a hand.
But you're...
Dead? Legends never die, Keith.
But you're really him. You're the Babe. The Sultan of SWAT. The King of Crash.
Crash and 100 other dopey names. Forget about that stuff, kid. We ain't got much time. I'm here because you're in some kind of a pickle, right?
Yeah.
A baseball with my John Hancock on it went over a fence and you can't get it back, right?
Yeah, right.
Then just hop over there and get it.
Wait. I can't.
Can't what?
I can't go into that backyard.
Why not?
There's a beast back there.
What kind?
A giant gorilla dog thing that ate one kid already.
Is that a fact? Sit down, kid. Sit down. Let me tell you something, kid. Everybody gets one chance to do something great. Most people never take the chance, either because they're too scared or they don't recognize it when it spits on their shoes. This is your big chance, and you shouldn't let it go by. I mean, you remember when you busted the guts out of the ball the other day? Someone's telling you something, kid. And if I was you, I'd listen.
But what?
You're the one with the rubber legs. Figure it out.
And tells him, hey, you got a chance to do something great. You take it. Why don't you just go over and get the ball? Just do it. Hop the fence and do it. And he steals his Hank Aaron card because I guess he's Babe Ruth. He's into carousing and gambling and doing bad things. And so it says heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
I love this dream sequence for Benny because it suggests that he's taking his life so much more seriously than the other kids. We've talked about this already, right? Where the game means so much to him. He is sort of training for something. He senses a greatness that he is destined for in life. He's apparently quite a deep kid. That's what this dream tells me about him, that he, when this big event is happening in their lives, which it's not his ball, he didn't hit it over the fence. There's no reason he would have a greater responsibility than anybody else. But yeah, he's a legend waiting to be born, Benny.
Well, he's about to be, because the next plan here is I skipped one of the plans, which is that remote control car that they also use to try and get it back, which is, again, as you said, destroyed by the dog quickly. They all end the same way. The dog gnashes its teeth, it throws the thing over the fence, the kids all scream. But it's
launch catapult.
Yep. But it's the following morning, and Benny is there at the Sandlot. He puts on his brand new PF Flyer shoes, shows he means business, and his plan is he's going to hop the fence and get the ball, just like Babe Ruth said, and which is exactly what he does. He hops the fence. He has a Clint Eastwood style showdown with the dog, with the ball between him. He grabs it, he runs, and the dog chases him all over creation. There's a lot of stuff that happens here. So,
has anyone ever looked this cool running?
Tom Cruise.
This is where Tom Cruise got it. Yeah, he was inspired by this he saw this movie and said, I have to make the Mission Impossible franchise happen. You get a great experience of the Americana, the small town vibe. They run through a church where a movie is playing.
It's not just any movie, it's The Wolfman.
Exactly right. Perfect wink and a nod to the beastly dog that's chasing Benny in that moment. The Founders Day, some sort of holiday picnic is happening. The giant cake, it's all pretty iconic.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have any favorite moments during this chase sequence. Is it basically, and they go through the pool where they've been before, locations you've seen, until eventually he makes his way back to the yard and hops over the fence again. His goal being, I think, hopefully that the dog will follow him over the fence and he can jump back over, and then the dog will be behind the fence. But he's literally doing, as they said, trying to do a pickle with the dog.
Oh, yeah. I have 2 or 3 favorite things. Number one is just the 4 separate times Benny leaps over that giant fence in a single bound is pretty damned impressive. Number 2, like I said, it had been 3 or 4 years. And when he goes to run into the rec center, I'm like, man, why didn't you just shut the door behind him? I totally forgot about Hercules crashing through the window itself. I certainly remembered him crashing through the screen, but that was just a great little surprise, a little second I'd forgotten. And then finally, after, all I could think about was how tired this kid must be, the amount of running he's doing at top speed all over the entire town. And then when they do get back to the Sandlot, all the other kids have visible sweat lines down the front of their shirts. And, it's at least not lingered on with Benny. He's still doing well.
He's superhuman. Yeah.
He's Aragorn levels of endurance, sprinting 12 plus leagues, 12 and 5 leagues in pursuit of the halflings. I love the cake sequence that I mentioned. When that cake, they think they've saved it and they sit down relieved, and then it gets launched anyways and comes down on their heads, and you get Ham come back for just a little taste of the frosting. Chef's kiss. Perfect.
Yeah, I think, as you said, he's Aragorn, right? He can run forever. I'm Gimli. Very dangerous over short distances. So they get back to the yard, and then the fence falls over on top of the dog. And instantly they go from, this dog is Cujo, to, we need to save him. This is cruel. And so Scott tries to lift the fence off of the beast, and none of the other kids will help except for Benny, the good-hearted, Benny the kind, Benny the paladin, who comes over and lifts up the fence so the dog can get out. And then immediately it's the Androcles and the lion fable, right? He pulls the thorn out of the lion's paw. The dog licks their faces. He's their best friend now. And the dog leads them to where all of the lost baseballs have been, including the Babe Ruth ball, which is a little chewed up, but it's still got Babe Ruth's signature on it.
It's certainly a little worse for the wear. There's something that happens in this moment. When I was a kid, I just understood it to be that the fence falls on the dog and sort of all the bigness was smashed out of him. Like that fence hits the ground and the dust goes woof. Like there's this big plume of dust that comes out from beneath it. And it always seemed to me that, like the legend of the beast was sort of crushed in that moment. And he's revealed to just sort of be, after that now, his powers reduced, just a dog who needs help.
Yeah, you're lifting that like veil of imagination there. And yeah, you're right. Like it's absolutely crushed. They've got to all face this reality. And, like this movie is happy and it has a happy ending. But like, you get that this was like 2 or 3 years and everyone starts moving away.
Mm.
So to know how fleeting that time is, you could argue it reinforces that as well.
Well,
yeah. And even then, right, all the shots of the dog running through the town, obviously it's not a giant kaiju puppet dog anymore. It's a real dog. Like the illusion is being stripped away as to this dog's, mystique. And so, yeah, they decide they can, with all these balls they now have, they can play forever. And they said, well, we gotta knock on the door. Now that we've destroyed this poor man's fence, we got to talk to Mr. Myrtle. And they knock on the door, and out comes James Earl Jones, which is, I love this because we do see someone who's supposed to be Mr. Myrtle in the black and white story that Squints tells. It's clearly not James Earl Jones. It's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately confess to him what they've done, that the Hercules got out. And he's impressed. It's the first time I've heard anybody get the best of old Hercules, the dog. And he says, why don't you just knock on the door and ask me to get your ball back? And they're like, damn it. If only we had done that. So they beat on Squints for a while, but he invites them in to see his house full of baseball memorabilia.
Here. I'll trade you.
That's really nice of you, but that ball really is signed by Babe Ruth.
So is this one, with the rest of the 1927 Yankees.
Man. Rivers Row. Lou Gehrig.
Babe Ruth. But why would you trade? That one's all chewed up.
I got a lot of good stuff. Look at that stuff. Besides, you need it more than I do.
Babe Ruth?
George? I sure did. And he knew me. He was almost as great a hitter as I was. I would have broken his record too, but...
You went blind.
Yep. I used to crowd the plate so the strike zone almost disappeared. Pitchers hate that. That's the way I played. 100% all the time. Baseball was life. And I was good at it. Real good. And then, one day, a high fast went and pow, the lights went out.
I don't think we could take this ball.
I'll tell you what. You guys come by here once a week and talk baseball with me. We'll call it an even trade.
And we get a little hint of Mr. Myrtle's backstory, which I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on who, they don't say that he's I didn't look up, was there really a famous baseball player with the last name Myrtle, active in the early 20th century, but
I didn't even look.
Yeah, I didn't think to do research on it for that same reason, because I was just so fixated on just this is the performance that made James Earl Jones a persona to me.
As opposed to a voice.
You've got... Yeah, he's Mufasa or whatever, and that's obviously really memorable. Obviously, the voice of Darth Vader, but the gravitas this man has, and to just be this kind person, the best case scenario of who you could meet when you overcome your fears and you knock on that door and meet a person is such a beautiful thing. And this is maybe my favorite James Earl Jones performance, like just for that reason, because I love him so instantly.
He is so charming. He's so warm to these boys. I do love that he's like a little scary. Like he plays into the grumpy man thing at first when he delivers that line, but just knock on the door, I'd have gotten it for you. He makes them feel the intimidation in that moment, but then he's so warm and so wonderful. And this ties it to Field of Dreams again, right? Like this is iconic baseball fan James Earl Jones here to give us a little bit of history. And while I don't think I know of any direct historical reference this character is meant to tie to, it does feel so true, like a name you wouldn't know, both because he wouldn't have been in the major leagues, he would have been in the colored league at the time, and he would have had exposure to some of these other guys. But and then the idea that everything that could have made his life what it was going to be was taken away in the blink of an eye. That always resonated with me as a kid.
Yeah, he tells this story, right? He's blind, and the reason he went blind is he took a baseball to the head and lights out. But he every time they mention Babe Ruth, he's like, "Oh, George." Like they knew each other. And as you said, if you're reading between the lines, because he is black, they would not have been playing on the same team at the same time. That Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier 10 years after Babe Ruth retired. Mm-hmm. So, it's really cool, this idea of like they still would have known each other and like respected each other's skill and stuff. And so he loves talking baseball, and the kids tell him, here's what happened. This Babe Ruth ball, and he says, "I'll tell you what. I will give you this ball." He lets him keep the Babe Ruth ball, I think, but he says, "Here, have this ball," which they call the Murderer's Row ball. It's not just signed by Babe Ruth; it's signed by the entire 1927 World Series winning Yankees. Mm-hmm. And he says the only price that he's putting on is that once a week you have to come by here and talk baseball with me. And it's like the sweetest possible ending for this crisis.
Yeah, and like I love how meaningful, like I think that Babe Ruth ball that's been destroyed in terms of its monetary value, like I think that does mean something to James Earl Jones, right? Because part of what endears these kids to him is the fact that like they went for it so hard, right? When he tells the story of his career, he says, "I loved to crowd the plate, and that's how I played. I put it all out there everywhere." That crowding the plate is what got him, beamed in the head. But if you don't have anything beyond the game, even if it's everything you are, like what are you going to be left with, right? And we know that Benny the Jet Rodriguez, no matter how much he loves baseball and needs it, like he's always going to have a life that's valuable beyond that because of the relationships that he builds. And Mr. Myrtle's pretty natural with these kids. We definitely get some shut-in vibes from him, like maybe no one knows his story, and we do see adult Smalls with the Babe Ruth ball again, and I just assumed in my mind, those kids probably inherited all that baseball memorabilia at some point. That's just a guess, but...
No, I think that sits well with my headcanon too, because, I sort of noticed this time around that Scotty is probably, and Benny too, but the perfect candidate for what Mr. Myrtle's looking for here, a companion to just come and talk baseball, because... even though Scotty has been coached when on the diamond to sort of stop thinking so much, we see him go home and make notes about baseball stuff to remember. And he notes Babe Ruth, right?
He really put off that research a little too long, Chris.
Yeah.
But he clearly began doing the research, right? He's been having an intellectual approach to baseball, because in that moment when this is just weeks after or days after learning who Babe Ruth is, Myrtle says, "George signed this?" And Scotty answers, "George Herman Ruth, yes, sir." Like he has now book studied the history. He's got the full 3-name proper understanding of Babe Ruth. So I love that, Scotty probably did spend decades after this visiting with Mr. Myrtle and forming a relationship and falling deeper into his own fandom, his own sort of more intellectual approach to the game. Scotty is the person who's destined to be up in the booth talking about sports, not the guy on the field playing it. And so I love that was probably able to grow and foster there with Mr. Myrtle.
Yeah, and this is kind of we were rounding into the end here as we find out kind of what happened as a result of all of this. One, Scott was grounded, but only for a week because he presented his stepdad with an even better ball than the one that was munched. So, he did the wrong thing, but he worked it out. So good for him. And we find out, some of the kids, they moved away, right? The twins who were on the team, they formed like an architectural firm and they build tree houses. And as you said, Ham becomes a professional wrestler. One kid just moved away, got lost in psychedelia, and they never heard from him again.
Mm-hmm. Poor Bertram, man.
Bertram. That's why I related to Bertram. I was like, if it goes in the ground, it's probably okay.
He's following the dead around. Yeah, at some point.
I kept in touch with those guys over the years, and I found out that Yaya's parents shipped him off to military school. After the Army, he became one of the pioneering developers of bungee jumping. Of course, we all know why. Bertram got really into the 60s, and no one ever saw him again. Timmy and Tommy became an architect and a contractor. They started out small, designing playground equipment and prefabricated tree houses. But they became multimillionaires when they invented mini-malls. Squints grew up and married Wendy Peppercorn. They have 9 kids. They bought Vincent's drugstore and they still own it to this day. Hamilton Porter became a professional wrestler. You know him as the Great Hambino. De Nunez played AAA ball, but he never got to the majors. He owns his own business now and he coaches a Little League team that his sons play on, called the Heaters. Hercules lived to be 199 years old, in doggy years. I was the last one to move away, but when I did, the Sandlot was still there. After Benny pickled the beast, his reputation spread all over town. From then on, he was known as Benny the Jet Rodriguez.
Yeah, De Nunez. We didn't really talk about him much, but he's on his kid. He played in the minors. He didn't make it to the majors, but he played in the minors. And we come back to Scott, who is calling the game at Dodger Stadium, watching his old buddy Benny get out of yet another pickle and steal home. And they kind of share a knowing look to each other, and we get a quick look around the little booth where Scott records, and we can see he's got all 3 balls. He's got the original Babe Ruth ball that got chewed, the one they forged, and the Murderer's Row ball. He's got the photograph of them. We find out, as he said, this was really the one perfect summer. And they still had more summers after that, but as the kids left, they weren't replaced. They just it slowly frittered away, but it became this magical piece of his memory that just remains frozen in time forever. And that is the end of the movie. Oh, and I should mention, he is still wearing the world's most awful hat at the end. So here we are at the end of the film. I will ask you guys the questions I normally ask, but you asked, on your podcast, you always do this bit about what prop would you want to keep from the movie. So I'm going to throw that out to you guys now, media lit style. So Kris, if you could have any prop from this film, which one would it be?
I'm glad I get to go first so I can secure the prop I want most. You can buy a version of this on the open market. I bought my brother some PF flyers for his birthday last year in black, the Benny the Jet, guaranteed to make a kid run faster and jump higher. But I want from the movie, I want the pair that Benny wore. I want the box they came in. I need that on a shelf in my prop cave.
Okay, good choice.
Beautiful.
All right, Randy, what are you taking?
So I've been really laboring with this one. I'm not going to do it, Kris, but even though we are only a few episodes into season 2 of our show.
I thought the same thing. Go ahead.
Doug, we have a new rule since we met last that once per season we can take a full set piece as opposed to just one traditional prop.
You want the treehouse?
I debated using it. Yeah, I debated using it on the treehouse. I debated using it on the baseball field itself. But ultimately, I decided I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. And I just want the chewed up prop ball in a nice little holder, in a nice little stand to remember this magnificent piece of storytelling. And from one of the best movies ever made, a movie that defines my childhood, that makes me feel closer to my own childhood, and it even makes me think particularly fondly of my own father. And there's something about that keepsake, that powerful childhood memory. So that's the one I've got to take.
Nice. Now, financially, I think I want to take the Murderer's Row ball, because that is, if it was real, you can imagine what that's worth. I was thinking about this. Part of me kind of wanted to take the dumb hat, but I think I kind of like the idea of like if I had I was thinking it's down to one of the two schemes. It's either the erector set machine with the remote control car with the catapult. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know when I would use it, but it sounds rad. Or the like harness that they make to like dangle them out over the yard. Some of the like kid contraptions seem pretty fun. So I'd probably end up going with one of those if I couldn't have the Murderer's Row ball.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I love that.
mean, Yaya had so much fun with that contraption. He became a pioneer of bungee jumping. Imagine what you could get up to if you had the rig.
Right.
Yeah, and like props to him for stepping up and being the first one to really put his skin in the game. Like obviously Benny has the hero moment, but Yaya was the first one to be over there, like staring into the belly of the beast.
Right.
Right. Well, so we're here at the end, and I think this is a very good movie to ask the question I always ask at the end of this podcast, which is, why do you think people still love The Sandlot over 30 years later? Like, this movie still resonates really, really well, I think, with kids of all ages. And, hell, we talked about all the lines everybody's still quoting from it. But what do you think is the magic that makes this movie have staying power?
I think we talked a bit about this already. It's not the baseball of it. There's lots of baseball movies that came out at the time, and you might have like plenty of things you can quote from Major League or Rookie of the Year, as I mentioned before. But we've been talking a lot about how this film captures the vibes around baseball, the relationships you build with the people you share the game with. There's something they really hit on in the truth of that, in the way it's inextricably linked to, like, the most romantic version of an American childhood summer that you can dream up. They get so many of those boyhood icons right in this film. I show it to my daughter. She's never played baseball. She's been to a baseball game at Fenway Park, but she loves this movie because the boys and their friendship and their dynamic, it's also very charming and relatable. I think that for generations to come, this will hold up.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I think this movie creates an aspirational experience. Like if your priorities are in line, if you are doing it right, you can have a summer that is this magical. It doesn't hit maybe audiences the same way it did in 1993, but I think it continues to endure because the pattern these days is to do more and more things, more and more structured things, more and more paid activities, plan out your kid's entire schedule, and to see all the magic that can happen when these kids are left to their own devices. I think we forget that in our day-to-day lives. And this movie, it brings us back there. It forces us to think about it. It forces us to remember it. When you're a kid, sports can so often be like, if you're the smalls, you might be worried, am I not good enough to play? Am I not good enough to hang? Do I belong here? You might feel pushed out of those athletic environments. If you are the Benny the Jet Rodriguez, you can get maybe a little bit too lost in the competitive side of things. Like you can forget to lift up the people around you. You can forget to learn how to pass in the basketball game. If the other kids on the team aren't going to hit that shot with the same percentage as you. And even if you're working on yourself, I don't think anyone really wants that to be what their team experience is about, like just being totally insular. So I suspect for a lot of people, I'm going to intentionally go a little hyperbolic here, but I think it might be a little bit of a spiritual experience for people to watch this movie and be in that dream.
I was thinking about this question, and doing this podcast is always by nature it is a nostalgia trip. It is a hop into a time machine and take me back to something that my guest enjoyed as in their youth, right? It's a chance to go back and enjoy something that I enjoyed, usually something I also enjoyed when I was a kid. But there's an order of magnitude greater when something can transport you back to what it feels like to actually be a kid, as opposed to just something I watched when I was a kid. And I think it was some of the best movies that feature, there's lots of movies that have kids in them, but not all of them are very good at it. They're, the kids basically act and talk like adults, or, there's something artificial about it that, like, okay, you've cast a tiny human, but they don't feel like kids. But you look at like E.T. or The Goonies or Stand By Me or this, like these movies that are about kids that nail the tone correctly. So much of this movie lives in just that experience of like, I'm on the team. I know what it feels like to just go play with a bunch of kids, and like, yeah, the world feels big and scary, and it's full of, magic and monsters and legends. And this movie nails it so well that, like, as I was watching it, I was thinking like, I've seen this movie God knows how many times. But it's been a while since I really came back and paid attention to it. And this time I was so transported, not to myself in 93 sitting in a movie theater watching it. I was transported back to like 4th grade, just being a kid and running around. And that's a kind of magic that is very hard to bottle. So, well, I'm so glad you guys suggested this. I'm glad we finally got around to talking about this movie. Like I said, it's been on the short list for a long, long time. For good reason. So, guys,
forever.
It will be around. Say it with me. Forever. So, if people want to find Media Lit, where do they go and find you guys?
All right. Well, I would recommend you find us on Instagram at media.lit.pod. I think we get a lot of our best interaction over there on that particular social network. But from there, check out our website. Media Lit has the freedom to talk about any type of pop culture we feel like talking about in the moment: high art, low art, music, film, television. And I think the best curated experience is if you follow that link to our website. There's something on there you're going to care about. There's an episode or two about something that matters to you. We would love it if you found it. And yeah, like, check us out over there. Hit us up at our email from the website, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear what you want to hear us talk about.
Absolutely. And I wholeheartedly recommend their show. It's a lot of fun to listen to. As you can tell, these guys are wonderful at their analysis is really great. And it's just a fun show to listen to. I've had the pleasure of being on it a couple of times now. So if you have any interest in that, you can find me talking about Star Trek The Next Generation and Batman the Animated Series on 2 episodes there. So seek that out. If you want to find our stuff, we're on pretty much every social media network for now. As they get worse and worse, we may drop off some of them as their billionaire owners show their true colors. But for now, anyway, you can go to the major ones. Just Google Nostalgium and you'll find it. If you like the show and are so inclined, please do drop us a review. Also do that for Media Lit, because dropping reviews on podcast does a lot that you don't see. But behind the scenes, that actually really helps the algorithm in terms of helping other people find the podcast, as well as just brightening our day when it happens. So also,
absolutely.
And of course, word of mouth is always appreciated as well. If you want to know what's coming up, follow us on the socials, especially for now, Facebook, Instagram, and BlueSky, because every Wednesday I'll post a clue as to what the next episode is going to be. So that's where you're going to find it. So I think that covers all the admin stuff. So, man, Randy, Kris, thanks again for another great conversation. I love having you on the show.
Likewise.
Yeah, man, so grateful to be here. Thanks for having us back. Can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, we've had so much fun building a little podcast family, and you're just one of the smartest, kindest, and most talented people we know. And I don't even think you dropped an impersonation today.
No,
and I still feel that way.
It's true. I did not go nuts. Unfortunately, my voice does not allow for James Earl Jones to happen. I don't think I could be any of the kids either. So, but thank you. Yes, it's just always there in the back of my mind, like, ooh, can I sneak one in? Not today, but that's okay. All right, guys. Everybody, thanks for another great episode, and until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcana.
Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountains, majesties, over the fruited plain, Everybody help me sing this. America. I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his face on thee. And you ought to love him for it, because he crowned my good. He told me he would. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, Lord. I thank you, Lord.
You know, I sometimes like to ask questions I only know the answers to,
Yeah, go
and I
for
did
it.
not know the answer to that question. I was kind of hoping your answer would be, oh, yeah, James Earl Jones was out there throwing
Yeah.
high heat.
He
You
was.
know?
I'm sorry. That is the correct answer. Thank you
He
for
was
reminding
famous for
me.
going up and in with his four seam, you know?
That's right.
What did you know who he was when you?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone
completely.
knew who James Earl, because you got 13, 12, and 11-year-olds.
Yeah, we all knew him.
As Darth Vader?
As Darth Vader.
Come on.
Marty York went up to him. None of us had the guts to. He was there for a day. And he had this huge trailer, and he's larger than life, and he's famous James Earl Jones. We're all like speechless, and he was so cool. But we also were all supposed to have a scene with him, and the director changed it to just having Scotty Smalls and Benny in the scene with him. So we didn't even act with him. We just, I think, he looked at us and laughed in one scene. So none of us had the guts to talk to him. Marty York goes up to him and goes, "Sir, I hear you're James Earl Jones," or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you know that he said, "You were Darth Vader in Star Wars," and he looked at him and said, "No, I am your father." And that was it. Yeah, that was it. That was the only time any of us talked to him. And I mean,
come on.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
awesome.
it was pretty great. I didn't need to meet him after that. I was like, "That's good. It's done."
He gave you really what you wanted.
Exactly, he really did.
That's a hanging curve.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I am your father.
I'll never forget. I remember that day just seeing him from afar, being like, "That's James Earl Jones." Field of Dreams had already come out. You know,
yes,
you'd seen
sure.
him in plenty of movies, and then of course knew him as that voice, and it was the perfect age because you're about to be a teenager who doesn't love Star Wars.
I mean,
as
and
a
that's
teenager.
Darth freaking
Yeah.
Vader.
It was
You know, and
pretty
obviously, that's by the way, is it kind of like saying Joe DiMaggio was Mr. Coffee? You know, like you kind of forget, like, you know, he's kind of a great baseball player.
But he was Mr.
You know,
Coffee.
but obviously Darth Vader is iconic.